All right, we are good. We're through the intro. Welcome, everybody. I guess I'll take the reins here, as usually Chad does our intro. Or do you want to take over, Bud? I don't want to. I don't want to jump in your shoes.
Yeah, I'll do
Go
it.
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I actually couldn't hear the intro, so
Oh, really?
no, I didn't hear it at all. That's why I was shaking my head no while you were playing it.
I heard it through mine. I don't know why it didn't go through.
Yeah. Well, good
well.
evening, folks, and welcome to Explorers, Seekers of the Truth. I cannot, for the life of me, remember what episode we're on.
I think it's 14.
14.
Actually.
This is gonna be our running gag. I can't remember a number. Remember everything else. But as always, I'm joined by my co-host tonight, Lesson Kavitz. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great, Bud. How about you?
Cold. Very, very cold.
Yeah, I don't know for anybody out there. I don't know where you're all located, but in the northeastern part of the United States, we were getting hammered with this Arctic blast of freezing cold air, freezing cold temperatures, snow, a mix of everything. It's just been really, really bad the last, almost 3 weeks now.
Well, down here, it's gotten bad like the last probably 2 or so weeks. It was still a little bit warm there a while back, but it is below freezing now.
Yeah, so. It's cold, very cold. but anyways, I guess I'll jump onto my usual shtick here and remind everybody how they could get in touch with us. You could always go to, let's see if it works this time. Oh, no, you son of a gun, yeah. Let's go right back to doing what it did before. Here we go. Our website, www.explorersgroup.com. You could go out and check out some archive shows, check out any kind of new information we have out there, and some gear and stuff that we have on there. It's kind of cool, so go check it out. Let us know what you think. You could also follow us on Twitter, which we were just talking about before, that I got to figure that out, at Explorers Group. So check us out on Twitter, follow along there, and obviously, where you're viewing us now on Facebook, facebook.com/Explorers.
Oh, I was really hoping you were going to mess it up so I could get you this time. But okay, fine. Be all professional.
I had to. I really had to take my time on that. And the last thing is, as you guys watch the show on Facebook, you guys could comment and kind of chime in throughout the show. Hey, Michelle. See, Michelle just chimed in. Hiya. Thank you. So we can see you on BeLive. BeLive has a cool thing set up so we could interact back and forth. So, check us out on there. So, and communicate with us. So, okay. So tonight's show, I guess I'll start it out here if you don't mind, my friend. We talked about werewolves in one of our past shows. Actually, it was the All Hallows Eve show, where we talked about the classic monsters, vampires, witches, and werewolves. We posted a story on our Facebook page a little while ago about, I guess, a werewolf epidemic in England. And there's a small village in England that's supposedly being terrorized by werewolves for decades. So we're going to start talking about that. We're going to kind of have that as the lead into the show. And we're going to talk about some other stories throughout history of lycanthropy or werewolfism, whatever you want to call it. And then we're going to transition into other stories more prevalent in the United States, like about the Dogman and its correlation and relationship to Bigfoot. So there's a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about. But I think we're going to start it off with that story that we posted, which kind of inspired tonight's show. So do you want me to start out on that, Bud, or do you? I kind of have all the info up if you want me to kind of run with it. We'll go back and forth.
Yeah, you could jump in here and I'll just kind of co-host for a while.
There you go. I'm used to you starting the show, so this is kind of off for me. So, all right. So like we were saying, there is that story that we posted on Facebook. It's in Cannock Chase, England, which I believe it's a town or a county. It says that there's places where there have been werewolf sightings, and central England seems to be a strange place for there to be a hotbed of paranormal activity, and yet it may just be. So I guess over the last 30 years, this area has been terrorized by what they say are dozens of werewolf sightings. It happens during the day, happens during the night, And paranormal experts believe that there's proof that there's werewolves in the woods of the Midlands of that region. So, and also they say that it isn't just werewolves that are stalking the trees and cemeteries of Cannock Chase. The area seems to be some kind of a portal to the bizarre and a magnetic for the unexplained. So, in addition to the Cannock Chase werewolf rumors, there's reports of UFOs, ghostly children. There's even been bizarre sightings of what looked like a medical experiment gone wrong. I guess a pig man, half pig, in conjunction with this, with the werewolf sighting. So it's very strange. And the more I started reading into that, the more I started thinking, like, England has a lot of ancient sites that have yet to be truly explained or figured out, like Stonehenge, and there's a few other places in England too that are just very odd. And some experts think that the placement or the regions of these ancient areas have a correlation somehow. And if you go across the globe, a lot of these places link and they have a pattern which they call ley lines. And ley lines are the apparent alignment of landforms, places of ancient religious significance or culture, and they often include man-made structures like the Stonehenge and stuff like that. And they're ancient, they're straight paths or routes to the landscapes, which are believed to have spiritual significance or have a lot of magnetic energy. And if any of you out there who are into like paranormal investigating and stuff like that, a lot of people believe that areas with high magnetic fields, running water that may be over a lot of limestone, areas that hold energy often kind of provoke or feed and fuel paranormal activity or give apparitions or supernatural beings their power to manifest. And these ley lines are supposedly big contributors to that. And ironically, I looked at a map of England and the ley lines that cross it, and I took a screenshot off of Google Maps of England and where this Cannock Chase is located, and it's almost smack dab in an intersection between two ley lines, which really made me think that could be a big contributor to all these unknown or these bizarre unexplained goings on. So I thought that was kind of cool. So that's just food for thought for all you guys out there. So as this story goes on, it talks about how this area in central England is a hotbed of werewolf activity. That we kind of covered that. And then there's also the sightings started after supposedly a local young man, made a pact with the devil. So the devil is given responsibility for a lot of evil stuff, from curses to the music of Charlie Daniels. But he may also be to blame for the werewolf of Cannock Chase, England. Now, I'm just reading basically verbatim off this website, but it says, according to the local legend, everything started getting weird in 1975. That's when a 17-year-old boy in central England in the mid-'70s took out his Ouija board, and I see Paul Filiash reacted there. If you're still listening, Paul, there. Another reason why I don't use Ouija boards. So he took out his Ouija board to test its powers. He said he would trade the devil his soul for the power to turn into a werewolf. And shortly after, a friend said that he received a phone call from the teen, but could only hear odd guttural noises from him. So the same young man was found dead soon after, and he had killed himself using a silver knife. And silver, of course, is the only way to kill a werewolf, or one of the ways to kill a werewolf, as we had talked about in our All Hallows Eve special. And a lot of the sightings, for whatever reason, seem to take place primarily in the cemeteries, and cemeteries naturally are a frightening place, especially after dark, because you think of all those who are laid to rest there, or there any restless spirits, or then you always think about zombies and stuff like that. So cemeteries are spooky just on their own, but now you add a werewolf epidemic into that, and that's kind of ups the creep factor of it. But But yeah, so it talks about the cemeteries and stuff like that, and I don't know why my screen is freezing, but and it also says the werewolf has left evidence of its haunting practices. A werewolf in town is creepy enough, but the most compelling evidence for the creature is also upsetting. In addition to showing itself to many people in a cemetery devoted to thousands of dead soldiers, evidence has been found near the cemetery that gives compelling evidence of the werewolf's existence. There have been several pets that have gone missing from homes in the area, and stranger still, several mutilated animal carcasses have been found near the cemetery. Could this be the leftovers from the werewolf's nightly hunting practices? Who knows? And there is, ironically, a hog farm. I guess hog farming is kind of big around that area, which might kind of contribute to that man-pig thing. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the West Midlands of England, the Staffordshire County area. One of the things to point out that this area actually has the most werewolf sightings currently in all of Europe. They're also famous for the Tamsworth pig, which is what they breed and farm out through that area. So it's definitely an area with a abundant food supply.
Right. I mean, what better place? Farms. Yeah, and what better place for a werewolf to hang out than a place that has a lot of bacon? You know,
I'd hang out there.
I'd never leave. Yeah. So I mean, that's a great point right there. That they have the abundant food source and really no need to go elsewhere because everything that they need is right there. Yeah. But another thing that they were saying is the werewolves may be somewhat evolved. And let's see what they have to say here. Werewolves and the night go together like Dracula and blood. After all, legend has it a werewolf transitions from man to wolf when the moon is full. And ironically, speaking of full moon, didn't we just have what they called a wolf moon?
Yeah, we posted about it
2 days ago. Yeah. So that's kind of odd that we're talking about, the werewolf and stuff, and we just had the wolf moon. So that's kind of neat how they kind of landed next to each other.
I have a non-related story.
Okay, go ahead.
I was driving yesterday, and I'm driving the back roads, and there's this big open field, and it's ringed with the road and a tree line. Mm-hmm. And don't I see from a distance at the edge of the tree line in the field a big black dog just running along the tree line on the way here. Now, it was a big, massive type pit bull mixed type dog. But I mean, it was just weird. And then get down the road a few miles, and I see two more black dogs running on the other side of the road. And the one was actually carrying a squirrel in its mouth.
Get out of here.
Yeah, right outside of Lynchburg.
That's weird, man. That's like a dark omen. You should go to church. That is odd.
Well, I've seen the two dogs running alongside the road before. The houses are right up against the road in this part.
Okay.
The one up in the field, I couldn't. Somebody could have been out hunting, and down here you can use dogs to hunt deer and stuff.
Right.
So you never know. But it was really cool out for a dog to be out by itself like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Oh, Michelle has no reports of attacks on humans in England. I don't know, really. I mean, there wasn't really anything written about human attacks. It was mainly on livestock and family pets. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that, my dear. I don't know. But I'm sure at some point in history there has been attacks. And actually, we have some stories that we're going to be getting to that have a lot of human attacks that were, supposedly werewolves. But we'll get to that next. So, yeah, we were talking about how they evolved. Let's see. Yeah, the Cannock County monster seems to be an exception to the rule. So let's see. So we were saying about how a werewolf typically transitions. Oh, yeah. So they transition from a man to a wolf when the moon is full. It says, however, the Cannock County monster seems to be an exception to this rule. In 2007, a mailman reported a local ghost hunting club that he had seen the creature. Stranger still, it happened while the postman was delivering the day's mail, so it happened during the day, not under the full moon. So the letter carrier said that at first he thought nothing of the creature, believing it to be a dog. He was surprised when the animal stood up on its hind legs and ran into the woods like a person. Perhaps the wolves have evolved to exist or the werewolves have evolved to exist in daylight as well now. So that's kind of weird, how, because like typically a werewolf would only be out at night under the light of the full moon. When the moon goes down, they return back to their human form. So to see one during the day is weird. And that kind of goes into the Dogman topics that we'll talk about later. So the werewolf may be the result of sick experiments, and he may not be the only one. According to the urban myth, after World War II, the governments of England and the United States conducted human experiments similar to the ones Nazis had undertaken. One such experiment was crossbreeding a human with a pig, and according to the story, it worked, except the pig-human hybrid escaped and hid in the Cannock Chase woods. A witness saw the beast and reported that it was 7 feet tall and had the head of a pig, including a giant snout. If a pig man was created, could it stand to reason? Can it stand to reason a wolf man also created in these bizarre experiments? That's kind of weird. Well, wasn't it during like the Stalin era in Russia where they were trying to create that half man, half ape army? It was trying to build the perfect soldier.
Yeah, and you got to realize, like, I think sheep genetically are close to us, or chemically. Pig's blood is close, and organs are close to human. Because I guess some transplant, the first one they used was actually a pig or something like that.
Yeah, it was like was it a pig liver or something like that
something like that, yeah.
Something really, yeah.
So some of that stuff isn't as, far-fetched, with the actual chemistry and stuff like that of the body. It's not necessarily possible, but not necessarily that these experiments weren't attempted. There were German experiments, American experiments, Russian, Japanese experiments that were doing some crazy stuff back then.
Well, I think the Russian doctor or scientist, or whatever you want to coin him as, he was coming near to success until they finally pulled the plug on him that it was unethical. Because I guess he was trying to use human females as, I guess, the surrogate and gorilla sperm. I guess they were trying to impregnate the women, and that wasn't working. And then they're trying to go on to more of a DNA kind of experimentation.
Yeah.
But it couldn't go any further because I guess people were complaining and they deemed it unethical. So that was that.
Yeah, and Stalin-esque Russia was a very different, time and place, where Stalin at one time is, do that, and then 2 weeks later he's, inviting you to dinner and poisoning you. So it's not a...
Pig and elephant genes don't mix. That's true, Andy. So it is weird, and it's kind of scary to think about all the stuff that did take place, experimentation wise, and it wasn't that long ago that they were trying to conduct this stuff. And I know that one of the experiments was they successfully transplanted, it was some kind of a monkey, where they took its head off of its own body and transplanted it onto a new body, and it actually was successful. The monkey survived.
Oh, yeah. And we say it's not that long ago, and you got to think about it. Not all these projects ended because of the end of the war or anything like that, or, like with Stalin's project. There's no guarantee that that was the only doctor working on it.
Right, right.
He may have come up with the idea and they may have ran it through their, scientific community, and a few of them said, I think we could do it. So they fund one guy. Well, if you fund one, you're going to fund another.
Right, exactly.
Because you're looking for the closest, quickest answer to have it work.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, a lot of people were saying too that I guess the Almasty of Russia, the Russian Bigfoot, was a product of that experimentation.
Now, wasn't the female that they allegedly captured actually prior to that, though?
Well, yeah, one of the they were thinking that she was actually Neanderthal.
Yeah,
that she was a relic hominid, like from our actual family tree, not a hybrid of or a result of the experimentation. Yeah. But they were thinking that she could have been some sort of a missing link. But I don't know if they necessarily tried to say she was Bigfoot. But she was some kind of crazy wild woman. But I think they did DNA testing on her, and it ended up that she was African, mainly African. And I guess she was, I guess some people back in the day had escaped, and for whatever reason they found refuge in Siberia or something like that. And there was a whole group of people living out there, and she was one of them. Well, there's actually a lot of her ancestors, a lot of her descendants are actually still alive, and they actually were able to take DNA from them to find out more about her.
Well, you got to realize, I mean, it's not that long ago that human zoos were a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing tribal people from the Pacific Islands, from Africa, from different parts of the world, from Asia,
and pygmies.
Yeah, having them live in a zoo-like environment.
They'd be put on display.
Yeah, for people. I mean, there was a. I know when I was still with the newspaper, they had done a article about a guy who was a local human zoo exhibit. He had come from Africa or Australia. I think it was Africa, and he basically, had lived in captivity for all these years, and eventually they kind of gave him a home here in Lynchburg area, and until he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
But he was, I mean, this is like the 1920s, 1930s that this, guy had been brought here. So it's not that, super crazy to think, if you think you're better than a group of people or something like that, or a species of animal, that you would have any problems with doing, research on them.
Right.
So one of the things you had mentioned, we were talking about ley lines and stuff like that. England does have a lot of intersecting ley lines. Even the United States does. And it depends whose map you look at for ley lines, but like the ancient Ram's Head Inn, which was a Neolithic, gathering spot for the early pagans of, England. And when you get into England, a lot of this like ley line and major Neolithic man structures that are still around, a lot of times do have a lot of UFO reports.
Right. Right.
Yeah, or not even UFOs, but strange lights or strange beings. And it kind of made me think about, not that this is what we're talking about tonight, but like Pennsylvania from the early 70s to the mid 70s with the UFO Bigfoot flap.
Mm-hmm.
And, trying to like kind of picture where the ley lines run through Pennsylvania and some of the reports that we've heard over the years of that. And, not that ley lines necessarily are a, proven, scientific factor, but it does have some interesting occurrences that that go along with it. So do you have anything more to add about the...
Well, it's funny that you said about the UFOs, because the next part of that story was that the Cannock Chase isn't just home to the werewolf sightings. It says the area has all kinds of supernatural activity. In the late 1980s and early 90s, the sky was inexplicably dotted with lights that many thought were UFOs. And a police officer even reported seeing an object doing seemingly impossible things in the sky before disappearing. So with both UFO and werewolf sightings in abundance, one has to wonder if there is, a correlation, and perhaps an alien being taking on the form of local lore. It might explain the daytime sightings, at least.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and you got to think about it, like with UFOs and stuff like that. If you're trying to navigate on a planet, and there's this natural energy grid that runs, on the planet, it would be pretty simple to follow that magnetic field or whatever it's creating would be something that you could follow to navigate the planet, with knowing that you're not going to run into a mountain following this line.
True, because if you think about it, a lot of these ancient sites that these ley lines intersect with or create this pathway, a lot of them were theorized to have been, if not designed and built, at least planned by alien beings. Yeah. Like the pyramids. They even thought that aliens had something to do with Stonehenge and the Nazca lines, the Nazca drawings and stuff like that. There's so many weird things. And even with the ancient Mayans, they had pictographs or hieroglyphs of people from the sky visiting and stuff like that, and they would do the skull binding to replicate their gods. And if you think about aliens, typically they are the big heads, larger heads, more conical shaped, So you never know. Maybe they do use that as kind of a roadway,
Yeah. Or, well, you think about all those structures that are built on these lines or the intersections of lines.
Mm-hmm.
And if a group is using these to navigate and two of them cross, it's going to be a higher traffic area for these Neolithic man is going to see more of those gods or the lights or,
this phenomenon that they can't explain. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're going to, if they're not scared of it, if there's some kind of, understanding of it, they're going to build their temples, their monuments in those areas as like a, hey, look, we're here. We appreciate you.
Their place of worship, their way to communicate and interact with their quote gods and stuff like that. So that makes perfect sense. That they would place these structures in the areas where they're seeing this phenomenon.
Yeah, I knew it made perfect sense. I said it.
Well, yeah, there you go. But should I go back to the story, or do you have something else to add there?
No, I was going to kind of ask you, is there like an eyewitness, like, you have your typical Bigfoot sighting, people have like a description of this, creature. So is there like a standard kind of description, or is it kind of all over the place?
Well, if I could get my stupid computer to work, I'd try and answer that question for you. Let's see. Well, it goes on to say about how there's the most bizarre theory of the area, sightings. There's a mention of black-eyed children that hide in the woods in Cannock Chase alongside the werewolf. And I know there was just something. Here we go. Eyewitnesses. Jesus Christ, come on. I don't know why it is lagging so bad here. Maybe my internet is literally freezing. Okay. Eyewitnesses describe the werewolf as huge and terrifying. All told, there have been 35 believed sightings of a werewolf, and 21 were where people came forward to tell their stories firsthand. The reports are terrifying. According to witnesses, the werewolf stands 7 feet tall and is covered in hair, looks like a human-wolf hybrid, and has a snout. The fact that so many people report seeing the creature, and at different times of the day, points to the notion that there may really be something out there in the woods. And it says paranormal investigators constantly monitor the news in the Midlands for more proof that the creature is real. Did I lose you? You just walked right out on me? All right. Well, I'll keep going, everybody. The werewolf was captured on video, apparently. If I could get my stupid computer to work. There we go. The advent of inexpensive video cameras used for action sports has turned nearly everyone into a potential daredevil, waiting for an awesome moment to go viral. 2 mountain bikers in Cannock Chase got more than they bargained for. In 2009, the cyclists were recording their ride, and the video shows a fun day of single-track shredding, but it also has an unexplained highlight. A creature can be seen stalking in the woods for a few seconds of the film, and it looks too tall to be a man and walks upright like a large dog on its hind legs. I can't, unfortunately, show you guys that video because BeLive, I could show pictures on BeLive, but I can't actually show video, which kind of stinks, because if you go to our Facebook page and click on the link about the werewolf, scroll down, it says the werewolf is captured on video. There is, I believe, oh no, that's just a little snippet. No, they don't have the video on there. I'll try and Google it and I'll post it on our Facebook page for you guys. Unfortunately, I can't get into that right now. Shoot. Yeah, can't get into it. But if I could back up. Boy, oh boy, this is going so slow. So, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the bizarre theories. If I could get this damn thing to stop jumping around. There we go. It says werewolves aren't even the most bizarre theory for the area of sightings. It says Ouija boards, UFOs, werewolves. It seems far-fetched so many supernatural things could be happening in one area. So I just started jumping ahead since you just got up and left there. Are you okay?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's all right. What? Y'all good?
Yeah, I had to go to the bathroom. I'm sorry. We don't have.
Oh, all right. Well, usually you would say I'll be right back, but you just jumped up and ran. I was like, God, I hope he's okay. But anyways, I talked to them. I was reading about, and I don't want to scroll. Oh, God damn it, there it goes. We talked about the eyewitness reports. Basically, it's very similar to what a lot of the Dogman reports have been. In close in comparison to the height of a Bigfoot, covered in hair, dog snout, half man, half wolf, typical werewolf, and they were any kind of, if there was any evidence or any reports. So I guess these 2 dudes were out riding their mountain bikes and they got a video clip of one. The clip wasn't in the story. It was just a snippet, like a screenshot, and it was really bad. But I'm going to see if I can find that video, and I'll post it up on our Facebook page after the show ends, and people can check it out and whatnot. But I was starting to talk about other bizarre happenings that were going on, and it was saying, Ouija boards, UFOs, werewolves, question. Let's see, it seems far-fetched so many supernatural things could be happening in one area, but again, like we were talking about with those ley lines, it's not surprising given the fact that they are known to generate unknown or unexplicable activity. But at least one scientific-minded local agrees that and has a theory to explain the possible werewolves. This paranormal expert, quote, claims the werewolf isn't a werewolf at all. Instead, the creature could be a subterranean Stone Age throwback, so a relic hominid, if you will. Essentially, this person thinks ancient cavemen could have survived for years in the mines of the area and have remained primitive, failing to evolve with the rest of humanity. What's more, the expert claims that there are more than one of the creatures and that there is actually an entire pack of them stalking underground, only coming out to eat deer, livestock, and pets. I don't know. That sounds even as far-fetched as a werewolf to me. And if my computer will actually work and scroll to the next thing, I'll talk about the black-eyed kids. But what do you think about that with the Relic hominid?
I kind of would believe more in a Relic, Stone Age man than I do in some of the, I would believe that quicker than I would believe a werewolf.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still a hard pill to swallow. I mean, logically, it would make more sense.
Yeah, it's not like that makes 100% perfect sense, because you would have a group of a breeding population who would just be interbreeding over and over again.
Right.
So eventually they would become so damaged, genetically, that it wouldn't be something that you could continue the genetic line. So they would have to die out at a certain point.
True. And if they are so interbred, I mean, that would explain how they're not as easily identified as an actual person, more as a monster. You know what I mean? Because there was a photographer, and God, the name escapes me, but there was a photographer that was in the Deep South, in the backwoods areas of the Deep South, that actually photographed a lot of like the inbred hillbilly population, for lack of better terms, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but apparently, well, if you take like the movie Deliverance, how there's like the inbred hillbillies and blah, blah, blah. Supposedly there are actual family groups that are so deep in the mountains and so tight-knit, breeding within the family that they are severely deformed. And I remember actually seeing some of the pictures, and it was frightening. I mean, they are very, very hard to look at, for to put it, bluntly. And I could see if somebody were just happened upon one of them in an area where you usually are used to seeing what we consider a normal person, and you see somebody so severely deformed, I can see how that would be like right away your brain would just think, oh my God, it's a monster.
Well, yeah, I mean, it would. This pig man hybrid and stuff like that. If it genetically, eventually the amount of inbreeding could create something that, if you looked at it, the explanation would be a pig man hybrid.
Right.
Or a man wolf hybrid. The distortion of the genetic structures and stuff like that would cause bone elongation, narrowing, the different issues, the skin problems and lack of appendages and stuff like that would be affected eventually.
Because some of the people, some cases of inbreeding have like the lobster hand, where a lot of the appendages fuse, and they just have like
claws.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's really bad, it could look like a hoof, like a cloven hoof. So that would add to the pigman theory. And if their face is, like you said, if the face is that obscurely deformed, say, oh my God, it's a pigman, but really it was just a severely inbred individual.
Yeah. I mean, it would. It's a lot easier to swallow than there's a genetic experiment that was half of a man with a man with a pig's head, running through the woods of England.
That's true. And the last part of this, it says a black-eyed child hides in the woods of Cannock Chase alongside the werewolf. While werewolves, UFOs, pigmen, and theoretical cavemen are frightening enough, the area where the creature has been spotted is also home to other supernatural beings. Witnesses have seen a black-eyed child in the same woods the werewolves supposedly lived in. Black-eyed children are a paranormal entity that have been experienced by people all over the world. It makes sense if there were to be any in England, Cannock Chase's woods would be where they'd hide. Ghost hunters flock to the woods to see for themselves. A few have taken audio recordings capturing a girl's voice. The Cannock Chase woods are not a place to go for a pleasant stroll through the trees. And that about wraps up the werewolf story of England. And damn, my computer is so slow right now. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that we have missed. And it's just dragging. But it is odd that so many things would be happening in such a small area. And you think that area too, I mean, it's in the center of England and it's pretty populated and has been for a very, very long time. You know, you think that something like that would have surfaced.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of European folklore, you know, of werewolves and stuff like that. So, I mean, a lot of those places in Europe have been, you know, some of the cities have been cities for, you know,
centuries.
Yeah. So to have, you know, certain areas, I mean, it's like America, though. You get outside of the major cities, you do have long stretches of, you know, country and farms and woods. So, I mean, it's not 100% impossible.
True. Very true.
Improbable, but
yeah. That is true. Well, speaking of Europe and some of their century-old stories, one of the other topics that we want to cover, and I'll let you tackle it, is the Beast of Gevaudan or Gevaudan, or however you want to pronounce it.
Yeah,
let's say Gevaudan.
I'm not going to try the French pronunciation.
It's
basically the Wolf of Chase.
Mm-hmm. Which is funny since we just talked about that Chase and Chase. Yeah. It's kind of, you know.
Yeah. It basically starts out around 1764-ish in the mountains of south central France. There was a beast, as they would describe it, you know, the beast of
well said.
You know, the first attack was in about 1764. Then about, you know, within basically 3 years, there was 210 attacks.
Mm-hmm.
There were 113 deaths. 49 people were injured. 98 of the 113 deaths, victims were partially eaten.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the victims were found with their throats torn out, which is a very canine or you know, wild animal type thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to take out the throat. You know, apes generally take out the face and genitalia
mm-hmm.
to disfigure, so it's not a breeding rival. Where a lot of other animals that are trying to kill something to eat it will take out the throat, you know, choking in its own blood, or, you know, clamp down on the esophagus and just basically choke them out. The description of this creature, it looked like a wolf, but it was as big as a cow. Large dog-like head, small straight ears, very wide chest, large mouth with large teeth, and it had a muzzle like a pig, kind of, not a pig dog hybrid, but more of a muzzle that was described more like a pig's.
Mm-hmm.
Claws on the feet were razor sharp. In color, it was red, with the back had like a blackish color to it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things they you know, attribute to this is an unpleasant odor, which I always think unpleasant odor is usually your, Bigfoot calling cards.
Right, right.
And, during the first attack, basically some bulls actually drove the beast off.
Okay.
Trying to just clip through my notes here for, this attack. Well, let's go to September 20th, 1765. A guy had killed in the same area, killed a gray wolf of 31 inches high, 5'7" long, and 130 pounds.
It's a big wolf.
Yeah, which they actually at the time had claimed to be the original attacking wolf.
The one that's been killing and...
Yeah. Now, some of the people that were injured, though, when they were questioned and asked to come look at the carcass, they said it wasn't the attacker. The scars, scars and wounds on it were not similar, or some people basically were defending themselves and were hitting it or stabbing it, and the fact that when they were stabbing it, the stab marks were not on this wolf that they did shoot.
Right.
And then December 2nd of 1769, another beast injured 2 men, and a dozen more deaths were reported to have been, attacks attributed to this animal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there were, mastiffs and stuff like that were being bred in this area. So one of the theories on this is a, breeder had bred the biggest one he could breed and basically put I want to say it was like a rhino or a boar skin over it. Basically because of how thick the boar skin was, this beast was actually shot at, and the bullets didn't seem to have any effect on it. Well, one of the things they think was it was a super thick boar hide that was placed over it, like kind of draped over it and then, cinched onto it. So when the bullets hit it, it didn't penetrate the hide, so the wolf or the dog was not injured itself. And you kind of think about it, it's kind of the Hounds of the Baskerville type thing.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy. Yeah, because they did say that, like, and you said that the creature was huge, much larger than any known wolf, like the size of a cow and all that stuff. Yeah. And I mean, you figure you get a mastiff and you mix it with, a wolf and stuff, and you breed it to be this large, menacing creature, and then you throw a hide on it and everything. And so you changed it. So you take the mastiff and the wolf hybrid, it's all, obviously going to look different, but somewhat similar. Then you throw that, protective layer on it, it's going to look extremely different. And the fact that it's so overpowering and was able to take, it attacked men, it attacked women, it attacked children, it attacked so many different people that you think at some point someone would have been able to fend it off properly and dispose of it.
Yeah.
And mastiffs, especially back then, and like in different, mastiffs were bred to be war dogs and to be these powerful, menacing creatures that just, were blood crazed, Yeah. So it would make sense that would be what it could be.
Yeah. Now, one of the other theories was it was a hyena.
Okay, I was just going to go into that. I was going to say, I don't know if you're going to talk about it or not, but I thought, one of the things was a hyena.
Yeah. Now, one of the problems with it being a hyena is the bite marks attributed to the beast had 42 teeth. Hyena only have 34. So you have 8 teeth on account of 4. Now, that's not to say that a hyena couldn't have 42 teeth.
Right.
do some kind of breeding issue or something like that, or just an over. Look at those people that have like a second and third set of teeth packed into their gum lines and stuff like that. So if the mouth's big enough, the teeth will drop into place.
Right.
So it could actually be a hyena. They had brought up like Asian hyenas and stuff like that, which would not have been necessarily a known creature to the common folk of that area. Royalty and stuff like that would understand or maybe know a hyena. But your average, country dwelling, people would not have, would have never seen a hyena, wouldn't know what a hyena is. So what is it? It's a big wolf.
Right.
Exactly. It's not a dog, and it kind of looks like one, but it's not. But it's not a this or that. It's really
they're going to try to compare it to and classify it to what they know and what they're familiar with. Oh, God, my back. Well, and plus two, back then, exotic animals were more freely spread throughout different areas. They were captured and taken all over the place, where now there's more restrictions and limitations on that. But back then, I mean, you could have gotten anything you wanted. And like you said, if the royalty were able to afford it and say they didn't want it anymore, they just threw it out, you know?
Or they released it, one of the things was, the royals like to hunt. So you release a big wild, animal that you're planning on hunting on your estate or something like that, and all of a sudden the thing gets, free of that area.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's terrorizing the countryside. So it's something that, could have been brought to the country on purpose,
right?
For hunting purpose or something like that. It gets loose, political unrest. You're not exactly the favorite of the family right then and there, so you don't admit to it getting loose. Now you have this beast of Chase, tormenting the countryside. And if people want to, a little more information about it, if you go back to back in 2009 for Halloween, they did the Real Wolf Man on History Channel.
Yeah.
They actually discussed this, creature and stuff on that episode, or that show. So there's some more stuff you could definitely learn about that.
And didn't they have an episode of Monster Quest? Wasn't there a Monster Quest episode of that? So I remember specifically watching a special on the beast of Gevaudan, and I remember it was two guys that were out there, and they were like, I think one was a zoologist and one was like some kind of a criminal investigator, and they were trying to recreate. Now, granted, it was centuries ago, but they were trying to recreate some of the stuff and figure out what it could have been, because there's this big statue erected in the village commemorating the attacks and stuff like that.
Yeah, I kind of, now that you say it, I kind of do remember something along that lines. It may have been like, Monster Quest or something, but I do kind of remember a show that kind of followed that line or thinking. The attack. I mean, Paris is really, or France is really kind of famous for a lot of their wolf stories. I mean, 1450.
Where most of the wolves hunted to extinction there. I don't even think France has any native wolves anymore, do they?
Not that I know of, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Yeah. You didn't dig that far back into research.
No, I didn't look up. I mean, wolves are pretty much, they were, hunted and stuff like that, and pretty much almost
obliterated everywhere. Yeah. That's true. But I know some reports of that beast of Gevaudan was they were thinking, because of its unusual size and shape and all that, I know that there was talks of lycanthropy and stuff like that in the area, and supposedly they thought it was God, I remember seeing it was some dude who was taking like mushrooms or something to try and channel or psychedelic herbs to try and channel like the wolf, and they were thinking that it was a man like that would take wolf form because they ruled out a man after they saw the devastation and the carnage that the beast had done to its victims, and they knew it couldn't have been done by a man, so they thought maybe he was actually transforming, but it was ruled out later.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times if you can't explain it back then, you blame magic and witchcraft and werewolves.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, in the notes, I mean, it kind of segues in where werewolf is a widespread concept in European folklore, existing in many variants. And the claims of lycanthropy had, it was a big deal during the witchcraft purge, and we talked about that in our All Hallows Eve show during the 15th through the 18th century. So it's not surprising that there's still a lot of reports and stories of werewolves and whatnot in the European areas, but leaving Europe and coming back, I guess, to the mainlands, to the United States, there are a lot of, I guess, they call it Dogman. I would say werewolf, but there's this Dogman. I like the Dogman of Michigan and stuff like that, Yeah, Cleo says, I don't believe the human body could go through the transformation. It is a hard pill to swallow that somebody could, they're like a skinwalker or something like that, or a werewolf, or a person who was inflicted with this disease, if you will, or whatever you want to call it, this curse, that their body would physically change to and from a different shape. I find that hard to believe as well. But then, like I was saying, we're going into this Dogman topic now, where in the United States there's people that say they see what they call a Dogman is half man, half dog, or half wolf, half man. I mean, I would just call it a werewolf. I don't know, why it's called otherwise, but...
Well, I kind of like to think of the werewolf as the classic... universal monster werewolf, not the Howling movie werewolf where it goes through a
transformation. Yeah.
I think of more of the hairy, covered facial hair, hairy hands, sharp nails,
like Michael J. Fox in Teen Wolf.
Yeah,
kind of like that,
more of that type of, when I think of werewolf, I mean, a lot of the werewolf, changes in the 80s, with the, transformation of the werewolf
skull changes, the snout, teeth. Yeah, that's really hard to comprehend, being that bone doesn't change like that. It doesn't, there's no elasticity or anything in bone to. So I don't know how that would work.
The fact that your muscles in your face and your joints and stuff like that, the way they're connected, you would have no connections because they would rip to go to the jaw and stuff like that would be basically useless because the way they're connected wouldn't hold or support the opening and closing of an elongated snouted jaw.
Right. I don't know. I think as far like when you're going into the Dogman theory and stuff like that, like a lot of people compare Bigfoot or the Dogman to Bigfoot and vice versa. Mm-hmm. It kind of makes me think, my opinion with the Dogman would probably be a misidentification of a bear walking, like on his hind legs. That to me would serve more of a, because I mean a bear and a canine have similar features in the face. The elongated snout, the teeth, the ears, even. I could see maybe, all right, well, somebody saw a bear, maybe because there was that bear in New Jersey that was injured and it literally learned how to stand upright and walk on its hind legs. It very seldom went down on all four, and it would walk around and through neighborhoods completely erect. So who's to say that another bear didn't go through a similar situation and just in an attempt to survive, it walks on its hind legs, and people get a passing glimpse of that, and they're, oh my god, it was like a Bigfoot, but it had the face of a wolf. It was like a Dogman.
Yeah,
I could see that being more of the misidentification.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Michigan Dogman.
Sure, go ahead.
Now, the first reported sighting are 1887, when two lumberjacks sighted a man with a dog-like head.
A man with a dog-like head.
Yeah, and this is in Wexford County, Michigan. So a man with a dog-like head, it's 1887. Prosthetics and stuff like that aren't going to give you you're not going to buy a Halloween costume that looks like a werewolf head or a wolf head and go tromping around in the woods. Now, that's the earliest reported sighting. There isn't a lot of, stories that fall between then and around 1938 in Paris, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
There was a man who was attacked by 5 wild dogs.
Okay.
He said the only problem was he was attacked by 5 wild dogs. One of them walked on 2 legs, upright. Now, not all 5, just one in that group walked upright on 2 legs.
But it still had a dog body, or did it have a man body? Did it say?
He described it as a dog. More dog-like, but bigger. Like a bigger, wolf-size animal.
Yeah.
But it walked on 2 legs.
So
that would almost be more man-like, to walk on 2 legs, but it was with 4 normal dogs.
Yeah.
So it was a pack.
And they were dogs, not wolves.
It was a wild dog attack.
That's weird. Yeah, Cleo says that the dog-like people go way back. Yeah, I know. There's reports all over with, and again, is it werewolf linked, or these stories are they is it werewolf or is it something else? That's why with the Dogman, I can't figure that out. I mean, Dogman to me, I would say is more on the Native American lines of the shapeshifter skinwalker kind of thing, where it is more. How do I explain it? Where the werewolf is more, to me, when you talk about actual werewolf reports, is more along the Hollywood lines, where it's more of a canine beast, and then the only correlation to human, like you have the dog head, the dog tail covered in fur, the hind legs, they walk bipedally, but the hind legs are misshapen, but yet they still have like human hands, with dexterous and posable, fingers and whatnot. So that's the only kind of link to, what I mean? Whereas the Dogman is more, I don't know, not so menacing, but yet then again, there was reports of the Dogman where, it was seen running on all fours, like it would run bipedally when it, was walking along, somebody saw it. then it would take off running bipedally, then it would drop down all fours, and it gained speed. So, you know what I mean? That, again, would still kind of fit the werewolf bill. So I don't really know. I don't know. And I wish I knew. I wish I could get in touch with somebody who was more knowledgeable on this that could shed some more light on it, but I couldn't find anybody to bring onto the show to interview. But everything I read, they have a biblical history. What kind of can you look that up and send us some info on it, Cleo? That'd be interesting to learn more about. Well, I mean, even Bigfoot supposedly has biblical ties about, you know, giant, hairy, wild people, you know, of the forest and whatnot. And some people even say that the story of David and Goliath, if Goliath was a Bigfoot and whatnot. So there's stories about everything everywhere, and I think that's why they continue to fascinate, is because they're interesting. But like I said, with the Dogman, a lot of people relate that to Bigfoot in many ways, and again, I would say that the misidentification of the Dogman would probably be a bear standing up, because if you think about the Bigfoot and the Dogman, the similarities range in height and the fact that they're covered in hair, but it ends there because the Dogman has a tail and a dog head. The Bigfoot is more of a flat face primate, no tail, more human shaped, you know, the conical domed head or pointed head. I'm not seeing, you know what I mean, where it could be mistaken for a Bigfoot.
Well, now in 1961, there was a night watchman who actually got a photo of the Dogman.
Uh-huh.
He thought it was a man until he saw that that it had a wolf-like head to the creature.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he was legitimately going to shoot it until he realized he had a camera with him and took the picture. The picture has never been analyzed that I know of. And of course, it's an old 1960s photo, so it's not the greatest quality.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the things is, a lot of times it is that the bodies are more muscular looking than bears. You know, in a lot of the reports and sightings, they generally have a more muscular frame than a bear usually demonstrates. You know, tails and stuff like that, you know, they're usually, you know, a lot of them are black in color, you know, and of course it's black in color with a big wolf-like head.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's hard to say if, you know, people are mistaking a bear, but you would think, I mean, like two lumberjacks, to me, probably have seen bears in the woods. You know, somebody getting attacked by dogs, that's not the most reliable testimony.
Right,
you know,
right.
You're defending yourself, you're protecting yourself as these dogs attack you. You know, it was on two legs. Like, what? It jumped up on two legs and ran away. You know.
Yeah, I wish there was always more to these stories. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you get these snippets, and you want more.
Here's the thing: like, could somebody have trained? You know, I trained dogs at one point in my life.
Yeah.
Could I have trained 4 of them to attack you and me to run in there with them and have, you know, long hair, my beard, and, you know, dark colored clothing on or a fur, and I start attacking you along with them, and then I call them off and we take off running, and one of them ran on his hind legs? Well, yeah, because it was a 6'2" man. You know?
Yeah. Well, I would assume that if this story, if it were like that, I mean, obviously, height and mass and everything, you're a lot larger than a dog. I mean, I think that would have been depicted in the story, whereas one of them was, a large in comparison with a human, rather than just, there were four of them were normal and one of them was on two legs.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Now, there was an old story from a guy. Now, he took years to report this, but it happened in like 1938, and he was down by the river fishing.
Right.
When he saw for lack of better terms, a dog man standing on two legs. He basically described it as a wolf standing on two legs. And he said it had blue eyes. And he said, in his fright, he may have been mistaken, but he thought it was smiling at him. Mm-hmm. And he basically yelled and threw rocks, and it took off running away from him. Now, he said it ran off on two legs. Mm-hmm. Now, you do have the Cheyenne Indian legend and whatnot of the Cheyenne Dogman soldiers.
Yeah.
Who were basically, just trying to harness their inner spirit animal, the wolf, and stuff like that. And some of them were said to be have the shape-shifting ability. Mm-hmm. And eventually, they had achieved this, a stage of enlightenment where they could turn into wolves and use the wolf's power and speed when they attacked. But the legend is most of them were killed, the legend is they were all killed by the army. And then there's a secondary part of that legend that a few of them escaped in a small pack now and live as wolves in the woods. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's got some Native American folklore. And the weird thing is there's no known deaths related to the Michigan Dogman.
Right. That's one of the things I was going to talk about, too, is there's no reports of anyone being killed, or I don't even think there was any attacks. It was mostly just sightings.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 2009, there was one that, ran out in front of a car, 50 feet away.
Yeah.
And the person thought it was like a mutant wolf. They just thought it was larger. It was, some kind of mutant. They said the only thing weird was the front end of it was much higher than the back end. When it was running.
So that would require really long forelimbs.
Yeah.
And that almost, to me, sounds hyena-like.
Yeah. Well, even if you think of German Shepherds.
Yeah, they have a slope back.
Well, not all of them.
The German line does.
It's actually the Czech line that has the slope.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The standard German Shepherd is longer. The German version of it is longer and tall, where the Czech and the former Soviet Union countries bred them more barrel-like, bigger chest, sloped back ends. Mm-hmm. My dog Teddy was a Czech Shepherd, and if you ever noticed,
he was so cool. Yeah,
he had the sloped back end, and that's part of the breeding that they did. So, I mean, it's not impossible for dogs to be, or wolves even, to be bred with the features of the higher, thicker chest and the more sloped back end. So when they run, of course, the upper part of the body is going to be higher. It's on longer limbs. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, the Dogman stories, at least the ones in Michigan, I don't see enough evidence or enough sightings to really build a, composite of what they're seeing or what they think they're seeing there. Mm-hmm. But then you also do, I mean, in Wisconsin, you have the Beast of Bray Road.
Yes, which I want to throw a little prop out there. Not that we're any kind of affiliation to them, but there's a production group small town monsters that have been making a lot of documentaries lately, and they're really good. So if anybody gets a chance to check them out, I strongly recommend. I know they have the Minerva monster. They have some different kind of Bigfoot monsters. And I think didn't they do that that new one, Invasions or something like that? It's based off of the Kecksburg or Kecksville, PA, with the Bigfoot UFO connection.
I didn't see that one. I know they did one, I think, on the Mothman. I remember seeing it.
Yeah.
Which was really good. I mean, they got some new, basically new old testimony and stuff like that, and some people who had more modern Mothman sightings or had family members who had relayed stories that weren't necessarily as covered in the, John Keel book or Jeff Walmsley's book. There were some of those newer kind of stories that were family stories that were finally being shared now that people had passed away and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. So if you get a chance, I think Beast of Bray Road is one of the new ones that they're trying to do a Kickstarter for. So when it comes out, go check it out. It's really cool. Oh, and sorry, Kendall, I see you posted something there. What about in the Egyptian times? They have something posted on their walls. Hieroglyphics. And I think you're talking about Anubis. He was, I believe, the Egyptian god of the afterlife, and he was popular with mummification. And he was either depicted as a canine or a human with a canine head. And I think it was either a jackal head or actually, no, it was the pharaoh hound, which I think it's actually a modern breed, but it's an ancient breed, but there's still pharaoh hounds today. And if you look at a pharaoh hound, it looks very close to the depictions of Anubis, of his head. So that's a good point that you brought up, though. I mean, all throughout history and the Bible and other religions and stuff, they always have some sort of a half human, half animal being or God or something. So that's what you're talking about.
One of the saints have a story. I can't remember what saint it is. Is it Saint Christopher, patron saint of travelers, who had a story about wolf men? Basically, they were this super violent group who had the heads of wolves and similar to a body of man, but covered with hair. And they were known to be these vicious warriors and would even turn to cannibalism when victims weren't available.
I never heard of that one.
Yeah, I want to say it was St. Christopher for some reason.
I know St. Francis is the patron saint of animals, isn't he?
Okay.
I don't know, man. I'm just saying maybe it was him.
I'm not good with my Catholic saints.
Yeah, neither am I. It's been too long. But anywho, so there's so many things out there, Werewolf, Dogman related and whatnot. And I'd like to have another show solely dedicated to the Dogman, and maybe we could get somebody, maybe we could find an author, somebody who's very, very more educated about the topic, because I know some stories, but I don't know all the stories. I just know the basic breakdown of the descriptions and some of the states that the stories come from. But we'll have somebody on in another show, and we could talk to them and see what's going on. We're going to have Ken Gerhardt on the show soon, so we'll have him talking about some cryptids and But I'd like to get somebody on. If anybody out there knows anybody who specializes in Dogman, let us know. We'd like to have them on the show. So get in touch with us either through Facebook or from our website or something like that, and let us know who we could talk to. If you have any contact information, that'd be great. But we're talking about Beast of Bray Road. Let's get on to that.
Oh, I actually just looked up while you were talking. It was St. Christopher.
Okay, so you're right.
Yeah. The legend told of a legend of dog-headed men who converted to Christianity, leaving behind their animal nature, gaining speech, and seeking to convert others. I was thinking it was St. Christopher, but I wasn't even. And the thing of it is even Marco Polo talked about these people at some point in his travels.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like the Beast of Bray Road. First
Before you go
reported,
into that, I just want to. Darlene had posted a comment that some Native Americans believe in shapeshifters, man to wolf. That's true. We did talk about that a little bit earlier, and we did talk about that in one of our previous shows. They're big on the shapeshifters and the skinwalkers, especially in the southwest in the desert areas. They're big with the shapeshifters, and that was actually on one of the Ghost Adventures more recent episodes. Actually, it's the one we saw when I was down at your house, Chad.
yeah,
With the shapeshifters. That was a really good episode. So if anybody is interested, check that out. It was a good one. But anyways,
yeah.
Beast of Bray Road. And thanks, Darlene, for writing in. Go ahead. Sorry.
The first report was, the first known report. Now, this is not saying that there isn't, legend or local folklore that dates back prior to this, but it was, from about 1936, and it happened on a gravel road, a rural road outside of Elkhorn, Wisconsin, giving it the name, the Beast of Bray Road. Now, there was a rash of sightings in the 80s and 90s. Which actually led the local newspaper to assign a reporter to cover the stories. Her name was Linda Godfrey. And she ended up compiling all her news stories into a book called The Beast of Bray Road, Tailing the Wisconsin Werewolf. I mean, so she even, went with the werewolf end of it more than,
Dogman, yeah.
It's basically described as being 2 to 4 foot tall when it's down on all fours, 7 foot tall when standing up, weighing between 400 and 700 pounds, hairy, biped similar to Bigfoot, fur is brown to a gray color. So you basically go from 1936 to the 1980s, 1990s without any significant, reports. But that doesn't, and again, significant reports doesn't mean it's not happening. It just means it's not making the newspaper or the radio news, and it's not being picked up or something like that. It could be happening, people could have been seeing it from 36 to 1980, but maybe they didn't talk about it, or maybe they just shared it with their friends or shared it at the local pub.
Right,
but nobody,
right.
Nobody at the newspaper wrote an article. So, and you know how people are. I mean, you see something, you can't explain it. You don't want to run and tell everybody that you're, seeing a werewolf-like creature running through the woods by your farm or something like that. So, and there's some, the skeptic view on it is, it's a wild dog. It's, some kind of wolf dog hybrid or coy dog. There's actually a giant prehistoric wolf. A
dire wolf?
Not a dire wolf, close. A Wallahilla. It's more of a Canadian breed of wolf in the northern parts of Canada and stuff like that. It was known to have hailed from. It's similar to the Armuk that the Inuits talk about. It was just a large prehistoric wolf. It's nothing that it's not a wolf man or anything like that. It's just a large prehistoric wolf that could be a relic population of them living, moving south over the years and avoiding a lot of human contact, or the humans that are seeing them aren't seeing them. They're just thinking they're big dogs or, wolves running in that area. They don't really think of the size necessarily right away. So, the Beast of Bray Road, it kind of got popular there for a while. There was a lot of, television, Monster Quest and things like that always kind of gravitate to these creatures.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these stories gained a lot of popularity, and just a quick. I found some sightings on that, and I apologize if I'm repeating anything, but let's see. It says in 1964, the beast was apparently spotted near the same burial ground or a burial ground. And in 1972, a woman reported it outside of her house. On this occasion, she was petrified of it, trying to get into her home and harming her family. October 31st, 1989, Dorothy Gibson was traveling down Bray Road when she heard something slam into the side of her car. She pulled over and got out to examine the damage of her car. The car seemed in decent enough condition, so she had a little walk around to see if she could locate a dead animal. She noticed a large animal about 50 feet away from her location, making a mad dash for her. She quickly jumped back into the car and sped off into the distance. She didn't get far before the strange creature somehow landed on the back end of her vehicle but fell off due to the speed. When she arrived home, she quickly called upon one of her neighbors to tell them what had happened. They both examined the car and found large gashes to the bodywork around the trunk area. So that's kind of interesting.
Now, wasn't that the one they actually covered on Monster Quest?
I'm pretty sure it was one like that.
Yeah.
Because it says Dorothy Gibson's encounter seemed to spark off a tidal wave of sightings, and a few weeks later, 24-year-old Lorraine Andreezy reported an incident. She was also driving down Bray Road when she noticed a strange animal crouching at the side of the road. She slowed down to get a closer look and was horrified by what she saw. The beast was covered in brownish-gray hair and had long fangs protruding from its mouth. Its head looked like a wolf's head with large pointed ears sticking out of the side of it. She also claimed that it was extremely well built with a heavy muscle tone. She sped off back home as fast as she could and explained the incident to her mother. A few days later, the pair of them had contacted Linda Godfrey, who she's written quite a few really decent books. You can look into that. A reporter who became very involved in the legend over the next few years. Godfrey would end up interviewing numerous witnesses to the beast. Hey, well, maybe we could get Linda on this show now that I think about it. I was just saying to find somebody. She interviewed the witnesses and eventually published her findings on December 29th, 1991. She then followed this up by publishing several books on the subject of the beast. So that's just some tidbits. Interesting. Yeah. So there's a lot about the Beast of Bray Road, and again, it all comes down to the werewolf thing. You know, is it where is the werewolf curse?